The mechanic had always taken pride in his work. Every morning he arrived at the small-town auto shop with a sense of purpose. Tools neatly arranged, grease-stained overalls ready, and a quiet determination in his eyes. He wasn't rich and he certainly wasn't famous, but he was respected by anyone who knew him. People trusted him because he treated every vehicle, whether it was a rusted old pickup or a shiny sports car, as if it were his own. He loved the sound of engines, the way metal moved under skilled hands, and the satisfaction of seeing a vehicle come back to life. Yet in this town, life wasn't always fair. Some of his coworkers looked down on him, not because he was lazy or careless, but because of old, unspoken biases that hung in the air like dust. He ignored it mostly. Work spoke louder than gossip, and every day he tried to prove it. That morning had begun like any other. The sun was just rising, spilling orange and pink light across the quiet streets. He sipped a lukewarm cup of coffee as he walked into the shop, nodding at the few regulars who were already waiting outside. The shop was small, cluttered with car parts, tires stacked in corners, and the faint smell of oil and rubber hanging in the air. It wasn't fancy, but it was his domain. Suddenly, the rumble of a motorcycle shattered the morning calm. It wasn't just any motorcycle, it was loud, powerful, and unmistakably commanding. The mechanic looked up from his workbench as the bike roared down the street, tires kicking up dust. A man on it pulled up in front of the shop and killed the engine with a single twist of the throttle. The biker was tall, heavily built, and dressed entirely in black leather. His jacket was adorned with patches, the most prominent of which was the emblem of a Hells Angels chapter. Tattoos snaked across his neck and hands, visible even as he removed his gloves. The mechanic felt a twinge of apprehension. He had seen bikers before, but there was something different about this man, a presence that demanded attention and respect, and hinted at danger if crossed. Without saying a word, the biker dismounted and pushed the bike toward the shop door. The motorcycle was beautiful but clearly damaged. The front fork was bent slightly and scratches ran along the side, evidence of a rough ride. The mechanic's heart raced a little, not with fear, but with the thrill of the challenge. This was not an ordinary repair. It would test every skill he had. The biker's eyes scanned the shop, sharp and calculating. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply set the bike down and waited. The mechanic wiped his hands on a rag and approached cautiously. "You fixing this?" the biker asked, his voice low and rough, carrying a weight that made even the air seem heavy. "Yes, I can take a look," the mechanic replied calmly, trying not to let his nerves show. "It'll take some time, but I can get it running again." The biker didn't respond immediately. He circled the motorcycle, tapping parts with gloved fingers, inspecting scratches, dents, and bent metal. His gaze occasionally flicked toward the mechanic, almost as if measuring him, testing whether he was worthy of trust. Finally, he nodded once, curtly. "Fine, you do it right. No excuses." The mechanic swallowed and nodded. He didn't need to hear the threats. He knew the stakes. If he made a mistake, it wouldn't just be a failed repair. It could provoke anger from someone who wasn't known for patience or forgiveness. Still, he focused on the bike, letting his hands and experience guide him. For the next several hours, the shop was filled with the sound of tools clinking, engines being adjusted, and metal being carefully shaped. The mechanic worked methodically, checking every detail twice, triple-checking the alignment of the wheels, the tension of the chains, and the smoothness of the engine. The biker hovered nearby, watching silently, arms crossed, occasionally muttering criticisms or suggestions in a tone that was equal parts evaluation and intimidation. Other employees in the shop couldn't help but watch, too. Some were impressed. Others were uneasy. It wasn't every day that someone worked on a Hells Angels bike, especially with such precision and calm under pressure. Yet, despite the tension, the mechanic never rushed, never panicked. He treated the motorcycle as a puzzle to solve, a challenge to overcome. As the hours passed, the biker's skepticism slowly turned into cautious respect. He didn't smile and he didn't talk much, but his stance relaxed slightly. The mechanic could feel it, the subtle shift in energy. The bike, once battered and unreliable, was slowly transforming under his hands. By mid-afternoon, the repair was nearly complete. The mechanic wiped his forehead, leaning back to inspect his work. The engine purred perfectly, the tires aligned, and every scratch and dent had been carefully managed or repaired. He glanced up at the biker, who finally spoke, his voice softer but still firm. Didn't think anyone could handle this, he said. You did good. The mechanic gave a modest nod. It's my job. I take pride in doing it right. The biker studied him for a moment longer, then finally reached out and shook his hand. It was a firm, unyielding grip, carrying unspoken acknowledgement. Not many can do what you just did. Remember that. For a brief moment, there was a sense of connection, a mutual respect forged not through words but through skill and integrity. The mechanic felt a quiet pride swell in his chest. He had faced one of the most intimidating figures he had ever encountered, and had succeeded without fear or compromise. As the biker prepared to leave, he tossed a folded envelope onto the mechanic's workbench. Payment, he said. And a tip. You earned it. The mechanic opened it discreetly, finding a generous sum that far exceeded the normal rates of the shop. His hands trembled slightly, not from excitement but from disbelief. He had done the work, stayed true to himself, and been recognized in a way that mattered far more than money. The biker mounted his motorcycle and roared down the street, leaving behind a cloud of dust and a lingering sense of awe. The mechanic watched him go, realizing that this encounter, brief as it was, had shifted something in him. He had faced fear, proved his skill, and, most importantly, earned respect on his own terms. The rest of the day passed quietly, but the atmosphere in the shop had changed. Employees whispered, some in admiration, some in envy. The mechanic cleaned up, feeling a mix of satisfaction and fatigue. He didn't seek attention. He never did. But deep down he knew that today was different. Something had shifted, and his life, though unchanged on the surface, had taken a subtle turn toward the unexpected. By evening, as he locked up the shop and walked home, the city lights flickering against the darkening sky, he thought about the encounter. He remembered the biker's eyes, the silent evaluation, the unexpected nod of approval. He smiled quietly to himself, realizing that life often threw challenges in the most surprising forms. And sometimes, when you stayed true to your skill and your character, the world had a way of noticing, even if you weren't looking for recognition. That night, as he lay in bed, he replayed every detail in his mind. The hiss of the engine, the clinking of tools, the biker's rare words of praise. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while he felt a spark of something powerful. Hope, pride, and a sense that his life could be more than just routine work. He had faced a storm without flinching, and he knew he could face whatever came next. The next morning started like any other, but the mechanic already felt a weight in the air. He walked into the shop with a quiet optimism still lingering from yesterday's encounter. The biker's respect, the rare nod, and even the generous payment. It all felt like validation for the hours of hard work he had poured into his craft. But he quickly realized that the world outside his workbench could be less kind than he imagined. The manager was waiting for him in the office, his face tight with concern. The mechanic had known him for years, seen him smile and joke, but today something was different. There was a nervous tension, the kind that made a person brace for bad news. Sit down, the manager said, motioning to the chair across from his cluttered desk. The mechanic did, setting his hands calmly on his knees. We need to talk about yesterday, the manager began, avoiding eye contact. About the bike. The one you repaired for that biker. The mechanic nodded slowly. It's done. The bike is running perfectly. Yes, I know it's running, the manager replied, his voice tight. And I can see you did excellent work. But there are complications. The mechanic tilted his head slightly, confused. Complications? The manager sighed, leaning back in his chair. It's the biker. People are talking. You know how this town gets. Some of our other clients are worried. And honestly, I don't want trouble coming to this shop. The mechanic frowned. He understood the fear. Biker gangs had a reputation, and some people let that reputation scare them more than they let skill and honesty guide their judgment. Still, it didn't make sense. He had done nothing wrong. He had fixed the bike, done his job well, and even gotten recognition for it. I don't understand, he said carefully. I followed procedure. I repaired the bike safely. I didn't put the shop at risk. The manager's eyes darted away. I know. It's not your fault. But it's perception, liability. Sometimes perception is enough to cause problems we can't handle. The mechanic's chest tightened. He had heard excuses before, but this one stung. It wasn't about skill or honesty. It was fear. Plain and simple. Fear of a biker, fear of the unknown, fear of facing the truth that someone else's work could outshine their own. "So what are you saying?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm sorry," the manager said quietly. "I have to let you go, effective immediately." For a moment, the mechanic felt nothing. The words hit him, but he had faced challenges before. He had fixed vehicles that seemed impossible. He had worked under pressure, and he had endured judgment from people who didn't see his value. But this was different. This was personal, and it was unfair. He nodded slowly, standing up. "I see. I appreciate the opportunity I had here. I'll clean up my things." As he walked through the shop to gather his belongings, whispers followed him. Some coworkers looked away, embarrassed. Others stared openly, curious or judgmental. He ignored them. His pride and dignity were intact, and that was more important than their opinions. Outside, the air felt sharper. The town was waking up, the streets filling with morning traffic, people rushing to work and errands. The mechanic walked slowly, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. How could doing the right thing, doing a good job, result in this? He passed the cafe where he often grabbed lunch, seeing familiar faces and friendly nods, yet feeling a quiet isolation. He hadn't realized how much he had depended on the shop, not just for income, but for a sense of belonging, for daily routine, for the small victories that gave his life structure. Now it was gone, snatched away over fear and misunderstanding. He spent the afternoon walking aimlessly, thinking about his next steps. He had some savings, enough to get by for a few months, but he needed work. And not just any work. He needed work where his skill, honesty, and dedication would be recognized rather than feared. Later that evening, he returned home, tired but not broken. He sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the bills and thinking about the future. The events of yesterday, the biker, the encounter, it all seemed distant, yet it weighed heavily on him. He wondered if he had made a mistake by trusting the biker, by doing a job so well that it drew attention he didn't want. Days passed and he struggled to find work. Calls to other shops were met with polite refusals. Some employers admitted they didn't want to deal with the biker situation, while others simply didn't return calls. Each rejection stung, a reminder that talent and integrity were not always enough in a world ruled by fear and gossip. But then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. The rumble of a motorcycle reached his small neighborhood. He looked up from his workbench at home, eyes widening slightly. It was the same bike, unmistakable and powerful, rolling to a stop a few yards away. The biker dismounted smoothly, removing his helmet. His presence was imposing, yet there was a calmness that hadn't been there before. He walked toward the mechanic with purpose, stopping just short of the porch. "You," the biker said simply. The mechanic studied him carefully. He had expected confrontation, perhaps anger over something trivial. But the biker's expression was neutral, almost respectful. "I heard about what happened," the biker continued. "That shop? They're idiots. Letting someone like you go? That's their loss, not yours." The mechanic felt a mix of surprise and relief. No threats, no intimidation, just acknowledgement. The biker leaned slightly on the bike, his tone casual but firm. "I have work, real work. If you want, you can come with me. Fix bikes, custom jobs, honest pay, no one breathing down your neck. You're good at what you do, and I don't waste talent." The offer made the mechanic pause. It wasn't every day that someone like this came along, offering respect and opportunity in equal measure. But the question lingered. Could he trust a member of a gang? Was this safe? He studied the biker's eyes, looking for any hint of deception. There was none. There was only sincerity, quiet but undeniable. I don't know," he admitted, cautious but curious. "I've never done anything like that before. What's involved?" The biker smiled faintly, a small crack in his tough exterior. "We fix bikes, make them better than new, customize them, sell them to people who appreciate quality. You get paid fairly, you're respected for your skill, and you're free. Nothing more, nothing less. You just need to want it." The mechanic thought about the shop that fired him, about the weeks of struggle, about the hours he had poured into work that had been undervalued. This was different. This was a chance to do what he loved, earn what he deserved, and finally be appreciated for who he was. After a moment, he nodded slowly. "I'll do it." The biker's expression softened slightly, almost like a nod of approval. "Good, you won't regret it. Stick with me, and you'll see what respect and honest work look like." That evening, the mechanic felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. His life had changed in the span of a week, from respected worker to unemployed and now to someone stepping into the unknown. But for the first time in a long time, he felt excitement rather than fear. He spent the night preparing mentally, organizing his tools, thinking about the possibilities. He knew challenges would come, but he also knew something crucial. His skill, his dedication, and his integrity had brought him here. And this time he would be judged not by fear or prejudice, but by the work he produced. By the next morning, he was ready. The biker arrived, and together they loaded tools, parts, and supplies into a van. The mechanic felt a strange sense of liberation, leaving the streets of his small town behind, heading toward a future where his talent would finally be recognized and respected. For the first time since being fired, he felt hope, pride, and excitement all at once. Life had thrown him a curveball, but in stepping up, trusting his skill, and taking a leap into the unknown, he realized something powerful. Sometimes doors close for a reason, and the right opportunity comes when you least expect it, but it's always worth the risk. The mechanic had no idea what the next days would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. He was ready to face it head on, and this time no one could take away the respect he had earned, not from a biker, not from a shop, and not from himself. The first days working with the biker were a mixture of excitement and uncertainty for the mechanic. He had left behind the shop that fired him, and now he was entering a new world, one full of possibilities but also unknown challenges. The biker's garage was unlike anything he had seen before. It was bigger, messier, but alive with energy. Bikes of every kind were scattered across the space, from classic cruisers to high-powered racing machines. Tools hung from walls, workbenches were covered in parts, and the air smelled of gasoline and oil, a smell that now felt comforting. The mechanic set to work immediately, his hands moving with the same precision and care he had always used. The biker watched him closely, occasionally offering advice or correcting a small detail. Unlike his former boss, this man respected skill over status, experience over fear, and it made the mechanic feel valued in a way he had not felt in a long time. The first project he was assigned was a custom cruiser, heavily damaged in a minor accident. The owner was particular, wanting every detail perfect from the alignment of the wheels to the color of the paint. The mechanic examined the bike carefully, mentally mapping out the repairs. He appreciated the challenge. It reminded him why he loved working on motorcycles. For hours, he worked tirelessly. The biker didn't micromanage him. He let him do his job, observing from a distance, giving instructions only when necessary. It was a strange contrast to his old shop, where co-workers often tried to take credit for his work, or bosses second-guessed every decision. Here he felt a freedom he hadn't known he needed. The first time the owner came to check on the progress, the mechanic felt nervous. He had done this many times before, but there was something different about working for someone outside his familiar world. The owner ran his hands over the bike, inspecting every detail. Then he looked at the mechanic, his eyes wide with admiration. "You did this?" he asked. The mechanic nodded quietly. "Yes, I wanted to make sure it's perfect." The owner smiled, a rare and genuine smile. "Perfect doesn't even begin to cover it. This is amazing work." For the first time in weeks, the mechanic felt a surge of pride that wasn't clouded by worry or doubt. He had faced the judgment of his old shop, the fear of rejection, and the uncertainty of the future, and now, he was being recognized for exactly what he was, a talented, honest worker who cared deeply about his craft. As days turned into weeks, the mechanic's reputation grew. More clients came, drawn not just by the bikes themselves, but by the stories they had heard about the skill of the man who repaired them. Word spread slowly at first, then faster, until even people from outside town were seeking him out. With the biker's support, he started experimenting with custom designs, taking motorcycles that had been damaged or overlooked and transforming them into machines that were not only functional, but works of art. Each project tested his creativity as well as his skill, and he thrived in the challenge. The biker became more than a partner. He became a mentor of sorts. He taught the mechanic how to navigate the business side of things, how to manage clients, and even how to negotiate deals. He shared stories from his own life, tales of challenges he had faced and risks he had taken. The mechanic listened closely, learning lessons that went beyond engines and gears. Despite the growing success, life wasn't without its moments of tension. Some townspeople whispered about his association with the biker, casting judgment based on appearance and reputation rather than the work he was doing. The mechanic ignored most of it, but occasionally it stung, reminding him that prejudice and fear could follow even the most honest efforts. One afternoon, a man walked into the garage looking skeptical. His motorcycle had broken down, and he had heard of the mechanic's skill, but he still seemed unsure. The mechanic greeted him warmly, inviting him to describe the problem. As he examined the bike, he noticed the man's hesitation, the subtle doubt in his voice. "I've been to a few shops," the man admitted. "No one could fix it properly. I heard you might be different." The mechanic smiled softly. "I'll do my best. That's all I can promise." Hours later, the bike was running better than it had in years. The man's eyes widened in disbelief. "I don't know how you did it, but this is perfect." "Thank you." The mechanic felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that his work had made someone's life a little easier. It wasn't just about money or recognition. It was about integrity, about taking pride in doing something well, and about showing people that skill and honesty still mattered. As the weeks passed, the mechanic grew more confident. He started managing multiple projects at once, taking on increasingly complex repairs and custom jobs. The garage thrived, a hub of activity and creativity. The biker continued to watch over him, occasionally offering guidance, but mostly giving the mechanic the freedom to excel. Despite the challenges and the occasional judgment from outsiders, the mechanic felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced at his old shop. Here, he was not just a worker, he was a creator, a problem solver, and a valued partner. His days were filled with hard work, but also with purpose, pride, and the satisfaction of seeing the results of his effort. Evenings were often spent talking with the biker, sharing stories, laughing at past mistakes, and planning future projects. The mechanic realized that this relationship, built on mutual respect rather than fear, had become one of the most important in his life. The biker had recognized his talent when no one else would, and in return, the mechanic poured his skill and dedication into every bike they worked on together. As the mechanic's reputation continued to grow, so did his confidence. He began to see opportunities that had seemed impossible before: custom orders from clients in other cities, invitations to showcase his work at local events, and even requests from other bikers who had heard of his skill. Each new project brought excitement and challenge, and he approached them all with the same careful attention and pride that had defined his work from the very beginning. One day, as he finished a complex custom paint job on a high-performance bike, he stepped back and admired the work. The lines were smooth, the colors vibrant, and every detail executed with precision. He felt a surge of pride, knowing that this was the result of his talent, effort, and dedication. The biker walked over, nodding approvingly. "You're getting better every day," he said. "People are starting to notice, and they'll respect you for it. Don't let anyone make you feel small again." The mechanic smiled, a quiet confidence settling over him. He had faced fear, prejudice, and uncertainty, and he had come out stronger. He had learned that respect was earned through skill, integrity, and persistence, not through fear, titles, or appearances. As the weeks turned into months, the garage became a symbol of what could be achieved through hard work and dedication. Clients came not just for repairs, but because they trusted the mechanic and the biker. People who had doubted him before started to see his value, and the mechanic knew that his life had changed in a profound way. He reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from being fired unjustly to finding a mentor who recognized his skill, from struggling to make ends meet to thriving in a world that appreciated his talent. Every challenge he had faced had strengthened him, teaching lessons that went far beyond motorcycles and engines. And yet, he remained humble. He understood that success was not just about talent, but about the relationships he had built, the respect he had earned, and the honesty he had maintained. Every bike he repaired, every custom job he completed, was a testament to his commitment to doing things the right way. By the end of this period, the mechanic had transformed, not just professionally, but personally. He had gained confidence, independence, and a renewed sense of purpose. He had learned to navigate challenges, embrace opportunities, and trust in his own abilities. And most importantly, He had found a partner who valued him for who he truly was, a skilled, honest, and dedicated man who would not compromise his principles for fear or judgment. For the first time in a long while, he felt that the future held promise. He was no longer defined by the limitations others had tried to impose on him. Instead, he was defined by his own work, his integrity, and the respect he had earned through effort and skill. Life had tested him, but he had proven that talent, honesty, and determination could overcome even the most difficult obstacles. The mechanic looked around the garage one evening, watching the biker clean a tool and humming quietly to himself. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunity, for the trust, and for the journey that had brought him here. He knew that the road ahead would have challenges, but he also knew that he was ready. With skill in his hands, respect in his heart, and integrity guiding his actions, he could face anything the future held. And as he closed the garage door that night, the mechanic felt something he hadn't felt in years, a true sense of purpose, pride, and hope for what lay ahead. Life in the garage had settled into a rhythm that the mechanic had come to cherish. Each day brought new challenges, new bikes to repair or customize, and new clients who trusted him to deliver excellence. The work was demanding, but it was the kind of demand he enjoyed. Unlike his old job, here he felt appreciated and free to make decisions, to create, and to take pride in every detail of his craft. The garage itself had grown busier than ever. Biker after biker came through, some with broken-down motorcycles, others seeking custom designs. Some clients came on recommendation, having heard of the mechanic's skill, while others arrived after seeing the work he had done displayed proudly on the street outside. Each bike presented a new puzzle, a new opportunity to show what he could do. And with every successful repair or customization, the mechanic's confidence grew. One afternoon, a young man arrived at the garage, riding a dirt bike that had clearly been through a lot. The tires were worn, the chain rusted, and the engine made strange clanking noises when he tried to start it. He looked hesitant as he approached the mechanic, shifting from foot to foot, unsure of what to say. "My dad. He told me you could fix this," the young man said quietly. "It's been sitting broken for months. No one else could get it running." The mechanic knelt beside the bike, running his hands over the worn parts. He could see the boy's hesitation and worry, and he understood the stakes. This wasn't just a bike to the boy. It was a symbol of freedom, of adventure, and of memories made on the road. He smiled reassuringly. "I'll take care of it," he said. "You'll have it running again soon." As he worked, the boy watched with wide eyes, fascinated by every movement, every adjustment, and every decision the mechanic made. The bike gradually transformed under his skilled hands. Chains were replaced, brakes adjusted, the engine cleaned and tuned. The boy's nervousness slowly turned into awe and eventually into excitement. When the bike roared to life, the young man's face lit up with a smile that the mechanic could feel in his chest. "You did it! It's perfect!" The mechanic smiled back. "You take care of it now, all right? Keep it running and enjoy it." Moments like this reminded him why he loved his work. It wasn't just about the money or the recognition. It was about helping people, restoring what was broken, and giving them back something they valued. It was about trust, respect, and making a difference with skill and dedication. As word of the mechanic's talent spread, the garage began to attract attention from outside the town. People traveled long distances just to have him work on their motorcycles. Some were bikers, some were collectors, and some were simply enthusiasts who had heard of the man who could transform even the most damaged bikes into pristine machines. Even with the growing success, challenges persisted. Some of his former co-workers and neighbors couldn't believe how well he was doing. They whispered behind his back, making assumptions about his relationship with the biker. Some were skeptical, others were envious, but he didn't let their opinions affect him. He had learned the hard way that judgment often came from fear or ignorance, and it was better to focus on the work in front of him than to waste energy on gossip. One day, as he worked on a custom project, the mechanic received an unexpected visit. It was someone from his old shop, the former manager, in fact. The man looked uncomfortable, shuffling from foot to foot, clearly unsure why he had come. I heard about your success," the manager said awkwardly. "I wanted to apologize. We made a mistake letting you go. People are talking, saying we lost someone valuable." The mechanic listened quietly, his expression calm. He had faced disappointment before, but this felt different. He had grown since that day, learned lessons that went beyond engines and metal. "I appreciate the words," he said finally, "but it's too late for that. I've moved on and I'm doing work that matters to me. That's more important than recognition from people who didn't see my value when it counted." The manager nodded, clearly uncomfortable, and left shortly after. The mechanic felt a sense of closure, not from the apology itself, but from the realization that he no longer needed validation from those who had doubted him. His work, his skill, and the respect he had earned on his own terms were enough. Meanwhile, the partnership with the biker had grown stronger. The biker had become a mentor and a friend, teaching not only about bikes but about life, trust, and perseverance. He shared stories of his own struggles and successes, offering guidance when the mechanic faced difficult decisions or challenges. And the mechanic, in turn, showed the biker the value of patience, precision, and honesty, skills that went beyond the mechanical and into the human. One evening, the mechanic reflected on how far he had come. Sitting in the garage after a long day, he looked around at the completed bikes, the workbenches, and the clients who had come and gone. Each project represented a step forward, a challenge overcome, and a lesson learned. He thought about the moment when the biker had first offered him a chance to work independently, and how nervous and unsure he had been. Now, months later, he felt confident, capable, and respected. The garage had become more than a workplace. It had become a community. Clients returned not just for repairs, but for the experience of working with someone who truly cared about their motorcycles. The mechanic had built relationships, earned trust, and demonstrated that skill and integrity could thrive even in unexpected circumstances. Yet life still had its tests. One afternoon, a wealthy collector brought in a rare vintage bike that had been in storage for decades. It was delicate, complex, and valuable beyond measure. The collector was cautious, clearly anxious about leaving such a prized possession in anyone's hands. The mechanic carefully examined the bike, noting every scratch, every dent, every mechanical issue. He explained his plan to the collector, detailing how he would repair and restore it while preserving its original integrity. The collector listened closely, nodding with a mixture of skepticism and hope. Over the next few days, the mechanic poured all his focus and skill into the project. It was a meticulous process, requiring patience, precision, and constant attention. Each time he solved a problem, he felt a quiet thrill of satisfaction. When the restoration was complete, the collector returned, his eyes wide with amazement. "I don't know how to thank you," the collector said. "I've never seen such careful, skilled work. You've brought this bike back to life." The mechanic smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. "It's my job. I care about the work I do." It was moments like these that reinforced everything he had learned. Hard work, honesty, and dedication were noticed, even if recognition came later or from unexpected places. And the respect he had earned wasn't just from clients, it was from himself, a confidence that could never be taken away. As the mechanic continued to work, his reputation reached new heights. People came from farther away, bringing bikes that others had given up on. The garage became a hub of activity and creativity, a place where skill, integrity, and passion came together to produce remarkable results. Through it all, the biker remained a constant presence, a guide, a friend, and a partner who had recognized talent when no one else would. Together, they tackled every challenge, from complex restorations to creative customizations. And together, they built a reputation that would be remembered long after the engines had cooled and the workbenches were cleaned. Even in moments of doubt or difficulty, the mechanic remembered the lessons he had learned. Fear and judgment could not define him. Prejudice and doubt could not hold him back. Skill, honesty, and persistence were more powerful than any obstacle. And respect earned through dedication was the most valuable reward of all. By the end of this period, the mechanic had not only transformed his career but also his perspective on life. He had faced rejection, intimidation, and uncertainty, yet he had persevered. He had found opportunity in unexpected places, built relationships that mattered, and proven to himself that his talent and integrity could overcome even the most challenging circumstances. The garage, once just a place of work, had become a symbol of triumph, growth, and respect. The mechanic had learned that success was not just about skill. It was about character, trust, and the courage to pursue what mattered even when the path was uncertain. And as he closed the doors each evening, watching the sun set over the quiet town, He felt a deep sense of fulfillment and hope for the future. He had come a long way from the day he was fired unjustly, from the whispers of doubt and fear. Each bike he repaired, each challenge he overcame, was a step toward the life he had always wanted. A life defined not by the limitations others imposed, but by the skill, dedication, and integrity he brought to everything he touched. And in that garage, surrounded by tools, bikes, and the hum of engines, the mechanic knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be, respected, valued, and ready for whatever the future would bring. Time had passed since the mechanic had first stepped into the biker's garage. Months of hard work, late nights, and countless repairs had transformed both his skills and his confidence. The garage had become more than a workplace. It had become a place of growth, respect, and recognition. Every bike that left the shop carried a mark of his skill, dedication, and pride. And with each project, his reputation spread farther than he had ever imagined. One morning, the mechanic arrived at the garage to find a group of people waiting outside. They were curious bikers, local enthusiasts, and even collectors from neighboring towns. Word of his work had spread so far that people were willing to travel long distances to have him repair or customize their motorcycles. The mechanic felt a mixture of pride and excitement. He was no longer just a local mechanic. He was becoming known for something bigger than himself. The biker, noticing the crowd, approached him with a rare smile. "Looks like people are starting to see what we've been doing here," he said. "Your skill is getting the respect it deserves." The mechanic nodded, feeling the truth in his words. It wasn't just about money or fame. It was about being recognized for talent and hard work, for integrity and dedication. This respect was earned, and it felt unlike anything he had experienced before. That afternoon, the mechanic received an unexpected visitor. It was someone he had never expected to see again, his former manager. The man had heard about the mechanic's growing reputation and came to see the work for himself. There was hesitation in his steps and a nervousness in his eyes that had never been there before. I wanted to see your work," the manager said, glancing around the busy garage. "People have been talking. I didn't realize what we had until it was gone." The mechanic listened calmly. He had anticipated this moment in some form, but he had no need for apologies or excuses. His success spoke louder than words. "I appreciate you coming," he said quietly, "but I'm no longer looking for validation from the past. I'm focused on what I can do now, and the respect I've earned here is more than enough." The manager nodded, understanding. He left shortly after, a mixture of regret and admiration in his expression. The mechanic felt a quiet satisfaction. He had proven, without confrontation or argument, that talent and integrity could not be ignored. Meanwhile, business continued to grow. The mechanic was now managing multiple projects at once, custom builds, restorations, and repairs that others had abandoned as impossible. Each project brought new challenges, and each time he overcame them with precision and skill. Clients left satisfied, spreading word of the mechanic who could turn any broken bike into a masterpiece. One day, a prestigious bike show came to the region, featuring the most talented mechanics and custom bike builders. The biker suggested they enter a specially restored vintage bike, one that the mechanic had poured weeks of work into. It was a chance to showcase his talent on a larger stage, among some of the best in the field. The mechanic hesitated at first, unsure if he was ready. But the biker encouraged him. "You've earned this. People need to see what you can do. Don't let doubt hold you back." The day of the show arrived, and the mechanic stood beside the bike, watching as visitors examined it with admiration. The craftsmanship, the attention to detail, and the flawless restoration drew praise from enthusiasts, judges, and even other mechanics. One by one, people approached him, shaking his hand, asking questions, and offering compliments. When the winners were announced, the bike had earned top honors. The mechanic felt a wave of pride and disbelief. Months of hard work, risk, and persistence had culminated in this moment. A moment of recognition not just for the work itself, but for everything it represented: skill, integrity, and the courage to persevere when others doubted him. Returning to the garage after the show, the mechanic was greeted with applause from the biker and their team. The biker clapped him on the shoulder. "I told you. You were ready for this. Now the world knows what I've known all along. You're exceptional." The mechanic smiled quietly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had started as a skilled worker in a small-town shop, undervalued and dismissed. Now, he was recognized as a master of his craft, respected by clients, peers, and even competitors. Life continued to grow better. The garage became a hub of innovation and creativity. Young enthusiasts came to learn from the mechanic, inspired by his story and skill. He welcomed them, sharing knowledge, patience, and encouragement. He understood what it meant to be given a chance and to be guided by someone who believed in him. As the garage thrived, the mechanic never forgot the early days, the fear, the firing, and the uncertainty. He remembered the lesson that respect had to be earned through skill and integrity, not demanded or assumed. He also remembered the biker's faith in him, the rare but meaningful support that had changed the course of his life. One evening, as the mechanic cleaned his tools and prepared to close the shop, a young woman entered cautiously. She had a damaged motorcycle, one she had been told no one could fix properly. The mechanic greeted her warmly, listening to her concerns and examining the bike with care. Hours later, the bike was repaired and running smoothly. She looked at the mechanic with gratitude and awe. "I've never seen anyone do this so well," she said softly. The mechanic smiled. "I just do my best. That's all anyone can do." It was moments like this that reminded him why he had chosen this path. It wasn't about recognition or money. It was about integrity, hard work, and making a difference in people's lives. Each person who left the garage with a repaired or restored bike carried a piece of that dedication with them. Even as his reputation grew, the mechanic remained humble. He knew that success was not just about talent, it was about character, trust, and perseverance. He had faced rejection, intimidation, and unfair judgment, yet he had persisted. And in doing so, he had built something far more valuable than a paycheck: respect, pride, and a life defined by his own choices. One day, the mechanic received a call from a large motorcycle magazine. They wanted to feature him and his work, to share his story with a wider audience. The article highlighted his skill, his journey from being fired unjustly to becoming a respected expert, and the partnership that had allowed him to thrive. The story inspired readers across the region, bringing even more recognition to the garage and the mechanic himself. As he read the article, the mechanic reflected on his journey. He had faced fear, prejudice, and doubt, but he had also experienced trust, mentorship, and opportunity. He realized that the most important victories were not just in awards or recognition. They were in the courage to continue, the integrity to stay true to himself, and the skill to make a difference. In the months that followed, the garage continued to flourish. Clients from near and far sought the mechanic's expertise. Young people came to learn, inspired by the story of someone who had faced rejection and emerged stronger. And through it all, the mechanic maintained the same dedication to his work, the same respect for his craft, and the same humility that had defined him from the start. The final chapter of this journey was not marked by a single event, but by a steady accumulation of moments of success, recognition, and fulfillment. The mechanic had transformed his life through skill, integrity, and persistence. He had turned a moment of injustice into a lifetime of achievement, proving that hard work and honesty could overcome fear, prejudice, and doubt. As he looked around the garage one last time that evening, watching the sunset and the motorcycles gleaming in the fading light, the mechanic felt a profound sense of peace and accomplishment. He had faced challenges, embraced opportunities, and earned respect in a world that had once dismissed him. And he knew that no matter what the future held, he had proven to himself and to everyone around him that skill, integrity, and determination were forces that could never be ignored. The mechanic's story became more than just about motorcycles. It became a story of resilience, courage, and triumph. It was about the power of opportunity, the importance of mentorship, and the strength found in perseverance. And as the garage doors closed for the night, the mechanic knew that he had not only changed his own life, but also inspired others to pursue their dreams, to face their challenges, and to never underestimate the value of talent, integrity, and hard work. In the end, the mechanic had achieved more than he had ever imagined. He had earned respect, built a legacy, and proven that even in the face of unfairness and doubt, a person with skill, determination, and integrity could rise above it all. And as the city lights twinkled in the distance, he knew this was only the beginning. A life full of opportunity, recognition, and the satisfaction of a job truly well done.